Thank you for watching this episode of the She Dreams in Color video series, but we do want to let you know that this dialogue does include some conversation that could be triggering on the topics of domestic violence and suicide.
I gave that message power. I embraced that message as my truth. And so I lived from this space of I'm not enough.
Life's a short and precious thing, sweet like honey and it sure can sting, sure can sting.
Very excited for today's episode of the She Dreams in Color video series because I have someone very near and dear to my heart, and I feel like I'm already going to cry. We just got started. This is Coach Cayme, Andrea. We met by chance, as many of us meet each other. She was working with the city of Charlotte through a health and wellness program for their employees, and my sister was lucky enough to work with her and said, you need to meet my sister, and having her in my life and her family in my life has really been remarkable, and I couldn't think of a better person to share with all of you as she talks about her occupation, which is interesting, and her obstacle, which is one that I think many people will be able to resonate with. And that's what we want to amplify here, is that all of our obstacles, no matter how big or small, you know, someone else is going through it too. Yeah. So Coach Cayme,
Yes.
As people affectionately call you, like they say, Coach Cayme. I don't think I've ever not said Coach Cayme.
Right.
The first part of the conversation is occupation.
Okay.
And you were even on the news interviewed about how you were one of the early life coaches in this country. And so talk about your occupation and how you got to that point.
Okay, so first, thank you. Right?
I just threw it all on you.
Know, like, but I do need to pause and say thank you for thinking of me. Thank you for the invitation to come and share my story and share some of the obstacles. Yes, you are absolutely correct, right? I started in this industry of coaching, life coaching specifically, before it was sexy. Before, like, you could throw a stone and there would be a coach on every corner. I kind of fell into it. In my mind at the time, my path was like, I'm going to be a counselor. I'm going to be a therapist. I have a background in ministry. So I actually was an associate minister at a church. And I would have these coffee talk conversations. That's what I would do with the congregation, right? With members of the congregation. And for me, I felt just like I was doing my ministerial duty. And individuals would meet. We would meet in the community one-on-one, and we would talk about their life, like where they were spiritually, where they were just kind of in general, where they wanted to be. And so I was sharing these conversations and just like what I was doing with a friend of mine who was in the coaching world at that time. And he said, you know, it sounds like what you're doing is coaching them. I had never heard of such. And so he planted the seed. And afterwards, I did some digging and I realized that there is definitely a place for therapy, right? As I have scheduled appointments many a times for myself. But there was a conflict that was happening inside of me. So I'm on this master's track, getting my master's in counseling. And like, it was fitting, but there, you know, it wasn't like that Rubik cubes kind of thing. And when I discovered that from a coaching perspective, I could take the perspective that who I work with is whole, capable, resourceful, and creative, that they're not broken, and that I don't need to be the expert in their life, right? Something clicked for me because what I was learning at the time as a counselor was like, of course, like you're going to need to find what's broken, diagnose it. Like, and I just like.
What about on the religious side of things what was there that message there too?
Yes. I'm going to talk from what I believe, right? So there is this kind of underlying thought process that we are wretched. We are broken, right?
Lost.
We are lost. Yes. And being in this place where you can stop and kind of question some of that, allow yourself to question some of that and see, like, what are some other perspectives? What are some other ways that I could look at this? And from a coaching standpoint, again, what I've adopted is that no, we are completely whole. Yes, we are ever evolving. Yes, there are different levels, different degrees that you can show up as your best self. But I just don't take the belief that God is like, you are a wretch undone.
Yeah.
And that was like a phrase that I heard a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't, I wish there was a word for what it does to you. It's a disconnect.
Yes.
It's an unsettled feeling
Yeah.
when you're on a pathway, you're hearing different information, and you had two ways to go, kind of. You had a
Right.
scientific way, a medical way, and then you had the religious way, and you kind of chose the middle of the road.
I would say I didn't choose the middle of the road, right? I would say that I chose the intersection. And I believe that the intersection is really spirituality. Spirituality, not religion, and not even science. Like, spirituality combines them both because they're both valuable. And that's where, when I chose that, that was where I was able to even tap into my own power. And that,
Yeah.
that's like a whole nother conversation.
Man.
Yeah.
So then as a life coach, what was it like when you started? What was the industry like? And how did people respond to, I'm a life coach
Right.
back then?
Right. A lot of folks didn't know what it was. You had to educate them on it. They instantaneously compared it or made it synonymous to therapy. The next most popular thing was executive coaching. And that's,
right.
So that's where I actually kind of started that path, was to really deep dive into executive coaching. And it's funny because I could do it. I do it now even, and do it successfully, right? I'm effective at it. But how I found at that time that I would be sitting down with these executives, these C-suite folks, and we would be talking about, the conversation would start off about professional stuff, their teams, right? How they could be more effective and productive. And inevitably, the conversation always comes back to them and something very personal, a mindset, a perspective that needs to be reframed or switched. And so it was then that I thought, I don't necessarily want to have executive coaching as my niche. Like, I want to step back and really be able to look at the person holistically.
Oh, because executive coaching kind of sectioned out, we're going to talk about your workplace success for the corporation.
Right.
Right. Wow.
Or for your career path.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So then how did you work for someone? Were you self-employed? How did you form this into a job?
That's a great question. It's interesting. I didn't realize until after the fact, but all of my typical 9-to-5s were coaching. They weren't necessarily called that, but those were the skills that I was required to use, right? So whether it looked like career coaching or it looked like helping individuals who, I worked for the Department of Health and Human Services with visually impaired and deaf and hard of hearing population. But it was helping them forge a career. So there was coaching, but it was with a specific population. And then just throughout my entire career, there have been these levels of coaching teams, right? Not necessarily called that, but developing business teams, but coaching individuals was always something I did on the side.
Just your 5 to 9.
Right. Oh, that's good. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't come up with that. I do love that term. I didn't come up with it.
Yeah. So I had my 9-to-5.
Yep.
And then I had the one-on-one coaching. That was my 5 to 9.
And you were doing that before everybody was doing that.
I was. And I'm so grateful, right?
Yeah.
Because so many of those connections that I made even early on in that 5 to 9 period of time have served me today.
A lot of people do that 5 to 9 for a while. And then is there a moment when you say, I can't balance both? I'm ready. I'm ready to make a leap.
Yeah. What I realized, I wasn't sure how to make that leap, because we're talking about around 2014, 15, 16, around those years when I was trying to figure out how can I do this full time, right? Like, I really want to make this my main gig, but I didn't know how. I knew how I could do it if I wanted to only do executive coaching, but remember, I don't want to do that. And I was working my 9-to-5 at the time, and I remember sitting at my desk, and I got this LinkedIn message where a company was hiring a life coach. You don't see that.
Right.
Right. And so I thought it was I'm like looking around like, okay, somebody's scamming me. And it was a company based out of the Midwest, and they had a new contract with the city of Charlotte.
Wow.
And they were expanding. They do health coaching, or they did health coaching, but they were expanding. And it was because the city of Charlotte specifically said, we want to start offering life coaching services.
Wow.
Like, we care about the health of our employees, but now we want them happy too. Was able to do what I feel like I'm meant to do. There were some opportunities that showed up, some obstacles that I turned into opportunities that showed up that really showed me, Cayme, you could do this for yourself. And so that was a stepping stone for me, launching Catalyst Global and stepping in as my own business owner.
Your own CEO.
My own CEO.
Yeah. And so what does Catalyst Global include? What does it encompass?
Our mission is to engage, empower, and equip individuals and organizations toward greater impact. Under Catalyst Global, you have individuals that I work with that are high performers, top achievers that I do one-on-one work with. We also work with organizations in training their employees and doing leadership and executive coaching for organizations as well.
And you also certify other life coaches.
Yes.
As a leader in the industry,
Yeah.
you found that it is booming. Everybody, it seems like, has some life coach certification.
Or, yes, and what I found was that there were so many individuals that just called themselves a coach, but they didn't have the certification, they didn't have the training. And when I sat back and I looked at, what my road to becoming a coach, a certified, like, credentialed coach, what that looked like, I've spent over 6 figures, invested over 6 figures in that training. The other thing that I noticed, Jen, was that there weren't a lot of folks that looked like me in the industry. So in my classes, in my courses, in my training, I was oftentimes maybe one of 2 Blacks, or maybe the only, or maybe one of 2 females, right? It wasn't diverse. So in starting, the Catalyst Coach Academy, which falls under Catalyst Global, I wanted to, and I had this kind of like secret desire. I didn't market toward this, but I wanted to be able to make good training accessible to individuals. And you don't have to pay 6 figures. You don't have to invest that kind to really be trained and to get certified. So that's what started. And now I can look back. We have had over like 8 cohorts.
Wow.
Right? 35 to 40 folks that we've been able to certify, and they have all been people of color.
Oh, wow.
Both men and women, and it's been really cool.
And representation in your industry is important for you to feel welcome in a space.
Yeah.
But then when you're a leader or a pioneer, you somehow take on a responsibility or a feeling that it's your job to bring others like you. And so as we shift from your career, because we always want to give people examples of careers they can do. You can be your own CEO. You can have your own company.
Yes.
Did you have models of people who owned their own company when you were growing up, or entrepreneurs, or?
Right. I did, and didn't even know it.
Wow.
I didn't realize that my dad was an entrepreneur. I mean, like, my entire life. He's a pastor. But I never thought of a pastor being an entrepreneur. But that's exactly what it is. Of course, there's the ministry side, but there's the business side, too, that you run.
So you didn't have fear of making that. You didn't have that extra fear of making that step to being your own boss.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did.
You did. Well, you didn't. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And I'm so glad you said
But
extra
talk about
fear.
that. Yeah.
So I had the initial fear, right?
Of course.
That everyone has.
That your family's depending on you.
Right.
And you're quitting your insurance job.
Right.
Because at some point, that 9 to 5 is just the insurance
and
job.
I'm in my 40s when I'm doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not this, like, I can... Like, I've got responsibilities, and I have people that are depending and leaning on me. And so to step out and say, like, I'm going to leave this secure, but consistent and steady paycheck to where it is like I'm betting on myself. There was this kind of, like, excitement that came with it. Like, okay, I'm gonna show everybody. I'm going to show myself. But then there was also this, like, oh, shit. I'm betting on myself.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's me to make it or break it.
Yeah. And were you married at the time?
No, we hadn't gotten married at the time.
But was it a decision that you made together?
Yes.
So a decision that you
Yes.
made together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that means that your wife had to bet on you too.
She did. And I want to tell you, she probably betted on me and was very open and supportive in betting on me before I actually embraced betting on me. Right?
Yeah.
We weren't married when I left my job, but we had already had the wedding planned. And so what ended up happening was I walked away from my position at the end of 2018, literally December 31st, and January 1, 2019, it was all on Cayme. And her words to me, she was like, "Babe, I got you for the first 6 months. Like I got us I'll give you 6 months.
Wow.
And you got to get your shit together.
Wow.
Like do your thing."
So in a way, I love that because you're like, yeah, no problem.
Right.
But as an entrepreneur, I'm like, oh God.
Right.
Oh God. Like 6 months isn't that long.
It's not,
But it's also
right?
great to have that deadline because you're hustling.
Yeah.
You're hustling and you know.
Yeah, and that's what it was.
Man.
That's what it
I
was.
love that. I love that. And so not betting on yourself at the level your partner is even kind of ties into the obstacle that you mentioned of self-love, of like believing in you.
Right.
So what has that journey been like of discovering what your obstacle is and pushing through that?
It's interesting because it does take intentional work to figure out when did I get programmed like this?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And so for me, in doing that work, knowing that I needed to do that work in that area, it was when did it start? And it does happen in those formative years. That programming that happens between 0 and typically like 8, right? And I do remember, like I mentioned, my dad has been a pastor all my life. And I would see him, I'm getting a little emotional. This is touching on some things. I would see him go and minister and serve other families and awesome job, right? At really that pastoral care element. My mom was a stay-at-home wife and full-time mom to me. And I have siblings, but there's such an age gap that it was kind of like I was raised as a single child. So oftentimes it was just me and her. And I would want him to come and, be at my cheerleading events and watch me cheer or, show up for this for me. And he couldn't because he was at someone else's family event. I remember sitting in a congregation and he didn't show up to my game to watch me and be in the band. But from the pulpit, he was talking about someone's basketball game that he attended. So it was in those experiences that I internalized this message that who I was wasn't enough. And that internalized message was just fueled by other experiences that I started to bring into my space because I gave that message power. I embraced that message as my truth. And so I lived from this space of I'm not enough. And so what is it that I need to do for someone else or to someone else? Who is it that I need to be for them or to them so that I can feel like I am worthy, so that I can get that validation that I'm enough? And I lived my entire life that way. It wasn't until I was pregnant and had my baby and I was reading a Brene Brown book that these memories are like
Raw.
Yeah,
Real.
they are. Because my daughter's only 9. So if you think about this is it's been happening for probably about the last 11 years. Like right now, the tears that come up, the emotion that comes up for me, it doesn't come up because the pain is there. It comes up from me remembering how broken I felt, remembering how seeing that little girl grow up and knowing now from the space I am now, like she is enough. Like all of her imperfections were perfect. But feeling the sadness of her not being able to experience that. That's where that emotion comes for me.
And also I'm curious, if you didn't have intentional neglect, intentional disregard, but it still shows up as a little girl feeling that way.
Right.
It's real.
It's real.
So to outside people, they're like, you're so lucky. Your parents are awesome. They love you. And then you get to a point as an adult where you have conflict because they are awesome people and human
Yep.
and flawed.
Yep. Yeah.
And even something intentional is an adult human flaw.
Right.
You know, and so there's all of that you have to like struggle with. And
that whole forgiveness piece. Because I was holding on to hurt for such a long time, holding on to unforgiveness for such a long time, but it was damaging me. I'm
sorry.
No, you're good.
One of the hardest things, a meme, I'm sure, that I read, hurt people.
Absolutely.
But that was hard for me because it made me forgive the hurt that was put on me before it was processed.
Right.
Like I shouldn't be upset. I shouldn't be hurt. I shouldn't.
Right.
Because they're hurt and they hurt people, and that's not.
Yeah, it's not. Right. It's not an excuse to accept their behavior. I am there with you, and experience that too. Like thinking that healing was this rush to get past the pain, and it's like no, like healing is really sitting in that shit and going through it and allowing yourself to do whatever needs to happen. And it's through that you then, like, once you get to that healed space, because I don't believe that you can really forgive until you're healed. I really don't. Yeah.
Did these scenarios of life coaching trigger feelings and processes that you needed to go through?
So when I was pregnant, so we're talking like, let's say 10 years ago, right? I was life coaching up until that time. I was life coaching and helping individuals from a place that was more theory than practice, right? I was helping folks, but I was coming from like this, not experiential space, but this like, this is what the book says. And going through that process of having my daughter and really during that time, standing in my truth, creating some boundaries, like making some decisions that would cause some folks to fall away from me. And then subsequent experiences that I've had since then, allowed me to coach from a place that is deeper, that is like, okay, no, I really, like, I get it. And that has deepened my coaching and made it even, I think, more valuable.
Yeah. I don't think you can take away from experience when someone brings that to work.
Right.
It just adds to the textbook.
It does.
How did your journey to self-love and acceptance show up in relationships?
Yeah. I was like going into these relationships and not knowing that that's what I was doing, that I was dating, my trauma, that I was pulling my trauma, that I was trying to rectify something. Like, I didn't know that my subconscious was kind of like on this journey of its own. But the relationships weren't working, and I was connecting to people who were emotionally unavailable. Like, I was connecting to individuals who resembled the environment that I grew up in. That makes sense. Not knowing it. Until I got to that point where I was like, I don't like me. I don't love me. I don't even know who the hell I am. Right. And in figuring that out and then starting to attract other individuals, I'm like, oh, wait, whoa, which is how I wound up with my wife. Because it was at that point where I'm like, I'm stopping this cycle. I'm no longer going to do this.
Did you have like a rock bottom of relationships or was it just time?
Right. That's a great question. So, I was in a relationship, a very long relationship, prior to getting pregnant, right? Got pregnant, ended that relationship as soon as I had the baby because I knew, like, again, I had dated. This was my trauma. And it's not on that person. I want to take some ownership too, right? For that. I thought I'd hit rock bottom. And I thought because I'd started doing this work that everything was gravy. And it wasn't. It wasn't. I still was not at that place where I like really dug myself, where I really felt my own worth, where I was willing to listen to my own intuition. I wasn't at that place. So the very next person that I dated assaulted me physically. It was a DV experience. It was my only one. I had never experienced. I never thought that I would put myself in that. Like, I'm not that chick, right? But it's one of those things that kind of crept in. And that was my rock bottom. Going through that assault and losing just that were 2 years.
Oh God.
Of hell. It was nightmare, and those are my darkest days to date. Literally, like I was ready to take my life. I felt like if I didn't have the know-how to like not know who this person was and to be in this relationship, like I'm not fit to be here to mother my daughter.
Oh,
like
God.
I'm not a good parent, right? Like I was there. I'm grateful that I didn't, because now I'm on the other side. But it took and all of the fallout from that, all of the people that I thought were my friends who were not. Like, it took all of that, me losing my job over that.
Oh my God.
I was scheduled to do like a pre-TED talk in like Boston or Chicago right before the incident happened. I couldn't, right? Like just so much that happened.
Domestic violence robs people of so much. The impact and the reach that it has can't be measured.
Right.
And until you go through it, you can't see all of the waves.
Right.
Your friends, your job, your self-esteem, your
Everything.
health, your
Yes.
children.
Yes.
I mean,
Yep.
your the any strides that you had made,
Yep.
now you're back 10 steps.
That's exactly how it felt. I just bought my first house, right? And 2 weeks after I closed, my job let me go. Right. So this was after, like, I couldn't show up for this, and it was connected to the whole incident. It was, and then so like the fallout from that. I have this whole house. I'm a single parent. Like, what the heck am I gonna do to pay for everything? And the stress of all of that. I ended up in the hospital,
Oh my God.
like bleeding internally because of like it was amazing, all connected to this. And it's funny because I thought I was doing really intentional work about like really loving myself and finding myself worthy. And when like in all of that, when I was in the hospital, I don't know how many blood transfusions I had to have. When the ambulance picked me up, I literally was bleeding out and going through that. So I thought, okay, yeah, rock bottom. And then that hit, and I was like, okay, Cayme, you got to do something different. And that was probably the major turning point.
It's an interesting experience to end a relationship and feel as if I broke the cycle.
Yeah.
I did the work.
Like I'm free.
I'm proud
I
of
did
myself.
It. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But it's not that easy.
It's not, and it doesn't stop.
And it doesn't stop.
And what's clear is like I haven't arrived. Like that was a big turning point, but because I lived in this like passive zone for so long where I didn't think I was worth asserting myself or using my voice. So now it's still uncomfortable, right? I'm not, it's not my default yet. I'm still working, but my eyes are like wide open.
Were there challenges for you in that situation that you now know were different because you were in a same gender loving relationship?
The entire DV situation, I couldn't get a restraining order. There were so many things that where because we were same gender, it either wasn't treated as something serious. It was like, oh, two girls are fighting, right? Like, no, ma'am, no, sir. Or some of the resources that existed for heterosexual folks didn't exist for me. Yeah.
So that's even more.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, because you have an individual at the time, right? I was like experiencing severe trauma. And then I'm like, that trauma is being triggered again and again. And I'm continuing to be what I felt was victimized, right? At the time. Yeah. By individuals who are supposed to be resources and to be support for folks like this. Yeah.
The system has changed some.
Yeah.
I believe it was just in December of 2020. North Carolina approved same-gender restraining orders, I believe, because I've kept my eye on that because it is a huge barrier. It's not a solution,
Right.
but it is a step forward, you know, to helping victims of domestic violence for sure. But we have a long way to go in recognizing domestic violence in same-gender relationships, domestic violence in different communities, you know, also.
Absolutely.
Because there are different stigmas. Even looking at coming from a religious community, a religious background, there are different stigmas and, you know, ways that we're supposed to handle these things.
Right.
So there's so much
true.
So much further to go. So I appreciate you sharing that, because the other, you know, thing that so many women, professional women will say, and you did say it, that's not going to happen to me.
Right.
Because we see victims on movies.
Yes.
They're scared.
Right. Right.
They aren't bosses, you know.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's not at all what it is. And I've always struggled with how domestic violence shows up in a flyer or in a movie and how it shows up in real life.
In real life. Yeah.
It's
this kind of
sneaky.
subtle. Yes. Yep.
And sometimes it attaches like a virus to that insecurity that you have, and then that just grows.
And that's it, right? Had I not come into that relationship with that, with already those insecurities and not feeling like I was enough, or, you know, second guessing myself, then there would have been nothing for her to attach that stuff to. Right. So where on the outside, people saw me as this confident, right, boss, like you know, this kind of badass, and that's not who I believed I was at all. Yeah.
But that doesn't stop them from trying, because I think abusers are looking, and they're like sharks out there looking for that low-hanging fruit. So moving forward in your journey to self-love, how do you come out of that and pick yourself up? Because even when you get out of it, you're now kind of like naked and afraid in the middle of Alaska.
That's good, right? That's good.
So where do you start from there? What are the next steps to get where you are today?
So going through that, I realized that there were 4 things, and I trademarked them, right? These are like my rules of engagement. Love fiercely, forgive quickly, do no harm, and take no shit. And what I realized was that's how I needed to engage with myself. This was not about anybody else. So I needed to figure out how to love myself fiercely, unapologetically. Call me selfish. Okay. If it's what I think I need at the time, it's what I think I need at the time. Like that kind of love. I needed to also forgive myself. Yep. Yeah. Quickly. Like not get in the habit of the do no harm, not get in the habit of talking down to myself, or, and this, like it's a continual thing. Again, I've not arrived, but those 4 things, and then take no shit. We know when we are BSing ourselves, right, about stuff. And so doing those 4 things over and over and over with me, like me engaging myself in that way, allowed me to open the door to draw in people that now okay, so if I'm doing this with me, now I can do it with you. So if you come close to a boundary, I'm sorry, but I'm not taking no shit, right? Like I'm going to be able to communicate that boundary, but I can do it in love, and I can forgive you quickly. Absolutely.
Man.
Yeah.
It's interesting how many people will hear your full 4 rules of engagement.
Yeah.
think of who they can apply that to.
Right.
Why?
Right.
And you're like, nope.
No.
Right back in here.
Yes.
Right back in here.
Because that's where it starts.
Right.
That's where it
Engage with
starts.
yourself. And
Yep.
and it taps a nerve to even hear you say them and think about doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
How can I forgive myself quickly?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And then you think about, man, just this morning, this is how I was harming
Right.
myself.
Yep.
You know? And
Yep.
all of the way that we treat ourselves is the famous Maya Angelou quote, we teach people how to treat us.
Exactly.
And we learn that from how we treat ourselves.
Yep. Yep.
Gosh,
Yeah.
deep things.
Yes.
I think to wrap up, I think it's really important because you touched on how deep and dark you went in that relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm always just eager to tell anybody who will listen, life is a series of chapters. And this is just one chapter. And,
Yes.
you know, a good friend of mine says the movie's not over yet.
Yeah.
So when you were in that deep, dark time and did not know that the movie wasn't even close to over, what advice now, looking back, would you tell that person who's in that place?
I would just continue to repeat that same message, right? That it's not over. Like, I know that this is what it feels like, this is what it looks like, but it's not. And even though you don't believe me, just trust. Like, you have to trust. I really believe that we have to, as individuals, trust something higher than ourselves. We have to connect with it. It is. It's difficult. But in those moments, if you are not connected to something or to a higher power, something outside of yourself, then what else do you have? So it was, sometimes it's moment by moment. I was going to say, you know, it's like you take it one day at a time, but sometimes it's not. Like it is a moment by moment. How, like, hold on, find somebody, a therapist, a coach, like whatever, to get to that next moment. And just like really hang in there. Hang in there. One thing is really key. What you feed your mind on a continual basis, when you are at your low, those are the things that come up. That becomes your default, right? And so I am grateful that even though I got to that really dark place, that some of the positive stuff that I had fed my mind before, it was there, and it may have been whispering, but it was there just enough for me to like just make it to that next minute.
I really hope all the access we have to social media, YouTube videos, memes, Instagram, whatever, people are able to scroll at 2 a.m. Maybe they're sleeping in their car because of a fight or because of a situation that was unsafe, and are able to see those messages of one more day, just get through one more day.
Turn on a podcast. Yeah. I mean, like seriously,
find those positive things. It wasn't so easy so long ago when we were really isolated in our bubbles.
Right.
The internet has opened up so much access, and now social media has given us even more. To see that there are people who not just get through and learn a lesson, but have a completely different outlook on themselves, the evolution of you as a woman, you know, in the journey. Sometimes I look back at myself and I'm like, that's not the same person. They say people don't change. I'm like, I might still laugh at the same kind of jokes, but I definitely am not the same broken, hurt, lost, desolate, you know, shell of a person, really, that I was. And so I hope that there are ways for people, you know, I always think about like a 16 to 25-year-old young woman who is in that place. And I always hope, is there a way for that person to expedite the process? You know, like once we find it, do we have to wait till our 40s, or can someone expedite the process, or is it just life unfolding?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that we can expedite the process. I think the process is the process. When I look back on my life, like there were many times when I had the opportunity to receive that message or to do that intentional work, but I wasn't ready. You know, that phrase that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think that that's kind of what life is like for us. And when you are really ready, there's another opportunity.
Mm.
And if you're really ready, then you'll receive that opportunity and it'll make whatever change it needs to make.
Yeah.
I have tattoos, right, that are symbolic. And so, like you were saying, you know, life, it's a process, and you've got highs and you've got lows, and you can't be defined by any of them. So I have a tattoo on my arm here that says, I am greater than my mountains and valleys, right? And it's kind of like hieroglyphic script to remind me that was a dark time in my life, but that's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But even some of my triumphs and like my victories and successes, like they're awesome, but that doesn't define me either, right? Like just to remind myself. And I have a scar that's going to be a life scar over my shoulder from the DV experience. And I always knew that there was going to be a tattoo that I would get to cover that, but that would be like meaningful. And so 2 weeks ago, Friday, I finally got it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And you feel like it was a time to do it. Like it was the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And will you share what it is? Or are you
Yeah,
open to sharing? I mean, you have to take
sure.
your dress off.
Right.
But
I know. Had I wore something different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it starts at the top, and it's a lotus flower. And I wanted that to be some type of way in the tattoo because lotus flowers grow through mud. Like that's what's so precious about them. And so me covering that piece, right? That scar with the lotus flower for me symbolizes the growth. Like that was mud for me, right? It was a muddy time. So growing through that. And then the flower comes down and adorns an elephant, a Mindy elephant. So it's like, you know how you see the elephants with all of the stuff on them. And so it comes down and adorns that. And then the elephant, that symbolizes for me strength. And like, I'm not going to forget. I'm going to continue to remember, but it's remembering to push me forward, to help me progress. And there are lots of details in it that are symbolic and stuff. But yeah, that's basically it.
And a tattoo for some people is another milestone in that process of learning and growing and loving, remembering, but putting that memory and experience where it belongs. Right. Because as you said, it doesn't define you. Right. You're not by definition a domestic violence survivor.
Right. And so for me, it's like, it's all of that because I have it on my arm intentionally because I'm not really one to wear sleeveless shirts because I've never liked my arms. So I'm like, no, I want it on my arm because I like my arms now. Like, so.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because I was like, I like your arms.
So I'm like.
They're working for you.
Right. So I'm like, no, I like my arms. Like, all of the stuff of like, no, don't do, like, I want to shed all of that, right? The tusks of the elephant. They're pronounced and they're pointed because that's the like, I ain't taking shit. Like, that's not who I am. So if I have to show that side of me, it's there, right? To protect myself, or to protect my loved ones, however that works. But also the strength that comes with the elephant. Her eyes are really sexy, right? And again, this is symbolic of me. Like, after that experience, I kind of went into a shell and I'm like, I don't want to show off my body. I don't want to wear something too sexy. Like, let's go. I'm different now.
All of it. All of it. Fiercely is such a great word to choose because it's fierce. It's all of it. Yeah. It's no inhibitions of loving yourself. Right. So when we catch ourselves with the words like, oh, I don't like my arms, or I wish this was this way, we have to stop that and get rid of it because that's not allowed in a love fiercely kind of mindset. Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. This is a lot of takeaways, a lot of homework for people, a lot of homework for myself. I feel so called out that the first thought I had was, I try to love people fiercely. People. Right. Not Jennifer. Right. That's it. So it's wonderful. Well, Cayme, thank you for being vulnerable and honest and sharing your journey. And I love that you are modeling the life coach CEO pathway for so many people because I think it's one that a lot of people don't have someone to look up to and see. And now here you are.
No pressure.
with every woman who shares her story on the She Dreams in Color video series, we like to have a t-shirt that amplifies her obstacle and possibly her occupation. So today we chose a shirt from Coach Cayme Andrea's Catalyst collection, and it's the 4 agreements that she spoke of. You can get this t-shirt off of her website. Love fiercely, forgive quickly, do no harm, and take no and remember what Coach Cayme said. These rules of engagement should be applied to you first.
It's our turn. Won't let it burn. It's our turn.